The South Caribbean Conference continues to take advantage of the varied opportunities available to positively impact the nation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. High on the agenda remains the deployment of specialist evangelists, both lay and clergy, in lifting the banner of the three angels' messages. Despite the harsh dry season during the early part of 2016, the rain from heaven still fell in copious measures upon the gifts and the gifted of the church, inundating several parts of Trinidad with the unadulterated word of God, as the South Caribbean Conference administration demonstrated its commitment to TMI, total membership involvement. These specialist evangelists, which included Pastor Cyril Horrell of the Caribbean Union Conference and Pastor Terry John of the University of the Southern Caribbean, together with evangelist Inskip Richards, ensured that over 550 persons were rescued from the enemy's camp. One of the projects envisioned by the conference executive to be undertaken during this quadrennium is the construction of a new conference office building. This initiative was officially presented to the church constituency during a specially called Leadership Advisory held at the Mongdo Church during the month of March. In the meantime, various other ministries were making their presence felt. ADRA continued to be a contender among those first to the aid of alleviating the distress and anxiety faced by those ravaged and displaced by flooding in the sister isle of Dominica. Homes were restored as houses were repaired or completely rebuilt due to the sacrifices of dedicated South Carib members who traveled to the various scenes of despair. The Health Department, through its fairs, medical missionary training, and health evangelism crusades throughout the country, was one other such line of missionary attack that was employed. Of special mention is the visit of a team of health professionals from the UK, Transnational Health Initiative UK, made up of health professionals of specialized fields who visited and lectured in several communities and schools. Once again, the men of the church were out in their large numbers, moving towards a better life at the Better Men's Movement Convention. They converged at one central location, literally in central Trinidad. The highlight of the day's diverse and intimate sessions for men only was the incisive and inspirational presentation by Pastor Kishford Frank, who challenged the men to assert themselves with the voice of the strong man. The publishing ministry also joined this illustrious army of foot soldiers, disseminating the gospel with fervency and enthusiasm through the diligence of the effervescent and dedicated literature evangelists, affectionately known as LEs. The providential launch of GEMS, GEMS, Girls of Excellence and Moral Standards, in the month of March 2016, targeting females between the ages of 11 to 35, must not be underestimated, particularly as it relates to the current debate on child marriage. This initiative, sponsored by the Women and Children's Ministries departments, is aimed at assisting and equipping young girls in becoming women of worth in the home, church, and the rest of the national community. Speaking of community, the Adventist youth are still mad for Jesus. Yes, they are still making a difference. Muruga was the chosen region where 120 young people spent a few days renovating and painting houses and rooms and donating much needed household items for those in dire need. The presence of the youth, adults, and children were also felt on the streets of Trinidad in the annual Morality March, boldly lifting the banner of traditional marriage in the month of February. Various media houses were on spot to cover highlights of this special event, where thousands of Christians came out to reaffirm the biblical position of one man to one woman. The Personal Ministries Department must be commended for undertaking another mammoth task of summoning the lay forces to a national rally held on May 14, 2016. Hundreds of devoted members bedecked in their zonal colors embellished the Arthur Bolden Stadium to synchronously declare, "Let's care, for our nation needs us." Dr. Balvin Braham of the Inter-American Division gave the charge, reminding all that before we seek to change the world, we must first invite the Lord to transform me. Also visiting Trinidad from the Inter-American Division was the Stewardship Director, Dr. Roberto Herrera. He, along with union and conference officials, participated in the first ever Stewardship Congress to be held on the island. Over 700 participants spent all of May 28, 2016 being inspired and admonished by presentations on the benefits and value of being financially faithful to God. As we continue to rally our members and redirect the rest of the nation to a holy lifestyle whose blueprint is found only in the Bible, this Trinidad Conference will remain steadfast and uncompromising, confronting and addressing publicly issues of national interest as deemed necessary and appropriate, while keeping its focus on the imminent return of Jesus Christ. Men from across the country also came out in their numbers to attend the annual Elders Convention hosted by the Ministerial Department. In the month of February, well over 600 elders, made up of young men, strong men, senior men, and quite a few women as well, journeyed as best as they could to the Grace Communion Hall, Samaru Village, Arima, to sit at the feet of ministerial rabbis to experience spiritual renewal, empowerment, and fellowship. The keynote speaker for this full day of activities was Pastor Andy Manzano, who delivered the inspirational message on the elder and his relationship to God. He was ably supported by presentations on how to make your church an evangelistic center by Pastor Owen Jack, the elder as a preacher by Pastor Steve Riley, and the elder as a soul winner by Pastor Terry John. The Ministerial Department also sponsored a special session for men of the cloth preparing to receive the oil of ordination. Pastor Claudius Morgan was invited to give the charge and sought to empower and encourage these budding servants of God to raise the standard of ministry in their service to God and man. In the meantime, the shepherdesses, or should I say, the ministerial spouses, came apart and rested a while at the Carlton Savannah Hotel in Cascade on July 9 and July 10 for the Ministerial Spouses Retreat. A total of 35 such spouses were in attendance. As you may well imagine, because there are more men than women in ministry, in South Caribbean Conference, the sessions conducted by Mrs. Veronica Simon, a certified counselor, and Dr. Kizan James, a medical doctor, were more customized to benefit the female ministerial spouses. South Caribbean Conference sees the importance of ministering to the needs of all of God's children, the halt, the maimed, the blind, and the incapacitated. As such, apart from preparing the church for specialized service in the community, as was evident by the Sabbath School workshop held in the first quarter and hosted by the Sabbath School Department, special needs emphasis came into focus during the last quarter. Special Needs Day was held on November 5 at the Dabadi Church and streamed to other congregations, including churches in Jamaica and the UK, where various persons with special needs sang, gave testimonies, and shared experiences of their lives in service to God and their communities. Pastor Roger Edwards of the Sangre Grande Parish was on hand to deliver the keynote address. God can use me too. Many things are wrought through prayer. So once again, prayer warriors gathered at one central location, Belandra, in October, to recharge, reignite, and revitalize their passion for prayer, still praying as they onward bound that God may plant their feet on higher ground. Evangelism remained on the front burner as the South Caribbean Conference forged ahead with several major evangelistic exploits. Evangelistic Coordinator Inskip Richards, along with Pastors Wayne Jeffrey, Kishford Frank, Mogave Gittins, St. Hugh Henry, and Joseph Mahadiel were deployed to toil side by side with several members of the Lay tribe throughout this Trini plantation, sowing and reaping a harvest from the field of souls. The much anticipated Breaking News series with Pastor Steve Riley, with special emphasis on the 7 churches of Revelation under the theme 7 Women to 1 Man, also had a share in the spoils. In the end, over 1,500 new and renewed Seventh-day Adventist believers were among the evangelistic crop that was reaped thus far for this year. Also giving birth to new believers by baptism was Camp Meeting 2016 with guest speaker Pastor Glenn Samuels, president of the West Jamaica Conference, who clinically unearthed provoking lessons from the Word of God under the theme, Get Connected. Also invited were scholars from the Biblical Research Institute who examined and discussed critical and contemporary issues confronting the church and the nation. These scholars included Drs. Angel Rodriguez and Elias D'Souza, former and current directors respectively of the BRI, Dr. Arthur Stelly, General VP of the GC, and Dr. Felix Cortez, President of the Adventist Theological Seminary. At the end of this August camp meeting, 13 persons covenanted with Jesus in baptism. Members of Central Trinidad also covenanted with God in diversifying their evangelistic strategies to cater specifically to one of the prevalent ethnicities found on the island. Dr. Faz Hossain led the charges in the months of April to May under the directorship of Pastor Kevin Mohammed, out of which the Brickfield Company, comprised mainly of East Indians, was formed and finally ratified in the month of October. God has once again shown that water can flow in the desert if we remain faithful to Him. For despite the harsh economic climate, financial blessings were more than just evident. In particular, the tithe income of the conference, when compared to the period January to October 2015, increased from $56.5 million to $57.3 million over the same period in 2016, an increase of 1.2%. I suppose once there are mouths to be fed, even in the wilderness, God will multiply the loaves. Speaking of which, departments remain committed to the importance of impacting the national community with varied initiatives. Health Ministries led the way in this regard when scores of individuals in the community of San Juan was screened and or counseled during a health fair held in the month of September. The borough of Point Fortin became a buzz of unusual medical attention as more than 1,800 constituents during 2 full days in September became beneficiaries of free medical service and advice from health personnel of Hands International, a team of U.S. health and medical professionals. Led by Trinidad-born Dr. Steve Agard, these 65 professionals and helpers included general physicians, gynecologists, cardiologists, rheumatologists, ENT specialists, optometrists, massage therapists, pediatricians, anesthesiologists, radiologists, pulmonologists, trauma specialists, and pharmacists. Indeed, it was a service that very few could resist. Aileen Thomas, Women's Ministries Director of St. Vincent and the Grenadines herself, offered meaningful service that very few women could resist as well. No less than 1,200 of them, both young and old, followed Jesus irresistibly and found Sister Thomas at the Presal Secondary School in Couva during the island-wide Women's Ministries retreat held in June. The impact has already shown that a new venue may have to be sourced in order to accommodate and facilitate the growing interest in such retreats for women and men alike. We dare not ignore the impact the youth themselves continue to make in various communities throughout Trinidad. Without any inhibition or reservation, they were at it again, targeting the village of Barrackpore this time to go mad, make a difference for Jesus in the month of October. Did they make a difference? Wait till they come your way to go mad for Jesus. The Education Department continued to make steady academic progress. Students demonstrated their keen ability to achieve at the secondary entrance assessment level, with top performers coming from 4 of the 14 primary schools dispersed throughout Trinidad: Erin SDA, San Fernando SDA, Maracas SDA, and Sangre Grande SDA primary schools, while outstanding performers at the CSEC level came from all of the 3 secondary schools, with one such person writing as many as 11 subjects. In addition, 2 students emerged as National Scholarship awardees for their marked performances at the CAPE examination. This, coupled with the over 100 baptisms experienced during the school year, sums up the department's drive towards excellence in producing an all-rounded student. The Department of Education remains committed to challenging both the teaching fraternity and the student body to raise the bar of excellence as outlined by the strategic plan, recently formulated with the aid of 3 competent professionals: Dr. Oscar Ocho, Claudine Alert, and Delano Henry. In fact, all the other ministries of the conference shall, with the help of the strategic plan as their compass, be seeking to guide the 160 congregations of South Carib into a renewed way of service to God and to man for the next 5 years. With this desire to be one, and with this passion for ministry, South Caribbean Conference believes the nation of Trinidad is bound to experience some measure of the transformation that it so desperately needs in times like these. As such, we refuse to be weary in well-doing, but instead will be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that our labor is not in vain in the Lord.